Okay, Juan, you have another question from a viewer?
Yes, this is a question from Meg Jordan.
Hi, Meg Jordan.
How do you open the longing to become one flesh in marriage and the burning desire in my womb to have a baby to God and be comfortable in the place of ache? It's hard for me to see everyone around me getting married and having kids. And it's also hard to listen to married couples talk about that longing because they are already married and experiencing what I pine for. I need wisdom here and a practical way to stay in the ache that some days feels unbearable.
Meg, bless you in that pining and that yearning. And perhaps it is difficult to hear my answer as a married man. My wife and I have raised 5 children. I climb in bed at night with a woman who loves me. And there's a reason you pine for it, because at its best, marriage is beautiful. At its best, marriage is a little taste on earth of heavenly delights. It is the main image that Scripture uses to help us understand heaven. Heaven is going to be, according to Christ himself, an eternal marriage. Christ is the bridegroom. The church is the bride. The Bible begins with the marriage of a man and woman, but it ends with the marriage of Christ and the church. And it is so important that we understand that the marriage that begins the Bible, as beautiful and wonderful as it is, I'm a fan. I am a total fan of marriage. As beautiful and wonderful as it is not our be-all and end-all. It is not the ultimate fulfillment of that cry of your heart. And I know what I'm about to say is going to be challenging because I'm a married man and you're not a married woman, and you pine, understandably and rightly, you pine for married love. So this is going to be a challenge, but it needs to be said. You're going to have to take it on trust. If you consider me a trustworthy human being, just take it on faith, take it on trust. This is true. The ache that you feel now will not be totally taken away by getting married. It just won't. This is one of the most painful experiences of marriage for me. And it happened within the first few years where there was like a wake-up realization that, oh, crapola, man, that ache is still here. The ache that I felt my whole life, the pining for love, it's still in there. And I'm like, why? I mean, it's kind of under the radar. It wasn't really a conscious thought. It was like, but I started to resent Wendy, my wife, because somewhere in my mind, I thought she was supposed to take this away. She was supposed to satisfy that yearning, aching, pining thing I feel. And when she didn't, I was like, I think I know what the problem is. You are. Woo! This is one of the biggest sufferings and disillusionments in married life. Discovering that no human being can take away that ache. And how many people, I'm reminded of a story here. How many people think, well, I'll leave you and I'll go find somebody else in hopes of that ache being taken away. Well, you didn't do it for me. I'm going to leave you and go find somebody else to take that ache away. And I'm reminded, as I was saying, of a story here. A student told me this years ago. And it was after the section in the teaching of John Paul II in one of our courses where I was explaining these 2 bookends of the Bible, right? The marriage of man and woman begins the Bible. The marriage of Christ and the church ends the Bible. This marriage is the foreshadowing. This marriage is the ultimate fulfillment of the longing. After I had presented that teaching, the student pulled me aside and said, Christopher, you just helped me understand so much of my life and the rage and struggle I've had with my father for decades, and I finally have a little bit of compassion for him. And here was the story. This man's father had been married 6 or 7 times. 6 or 7 times. And on the 5th or 6th marriage, when his father told him he was getting married again, and they had all been divorces, and his father was getting married again, his son, in this angry, kind of understandable, angry tirade, said, "What is your problem, Dad? Why are you going from woman to woman to woman to woman? What is your problem?" And this was his father's response. He said, "I've just never found a woman who could satisfy me." And you never will. You never will find a human being who can satisfy that ache. St. Augustine said it best. St. Augustine said it best. "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." All of that, dear Meg, to frame my comments, that desire you have, that pining you have for a husband, to be a wife and a mother, is beautiful. It is holy. It is sacred. But it is an illusion to think getting married and becoming a wife and a mother will alleviate that ache. It will minister to it. It will help it. I mean, as a married man, I know my wife's love ministers to me in beautiful, profound, glorious ways. But it doesn't take away the ache. I, like many married men, when I thought, I know what the problem is, my ache's not gone, I know what the problem is, you are, here was my solution. I tried to mold and shape Wendy into what I thought would be more fulfilling for me. And it wasn't a conscious thing. It kind of happens subtly, maybe not so subtly sometimes, but we end up trying to mold and shape the other into something we want them to be because they're not doing it for me anymore. That led us into so much pain in our marriage. And Wendy, in her own way, was doing the same thing to me. I remember going on a retreat. This was about 12 years into married life, went on this retreat, 10 or 12 years into married life. And I was with a very beautiful priest who knows my story and says, "Christopher, I want to teach you how to pray. This is going to relieve the pressure from your marriage." All of this, I think, will be pertinent, Meg, for your question. This priest said, "Christopher, I want to teach you to pray. And this is what's going to help you relieve the pressure on your marriage." And I'm like, well, whatever. He says, "Prayer is an exercise of desire. And I'm going to take you through some exercises on this retreat to help you get in touch with your deepest desire." And I'm like, okay, whatever. And he says, "You got to promise yourself and promise the Lord that you will not censor anything you feel in your heart as you go through these exercises." I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go enter into these exercises that he gave me on this retreat. And sure enough, these desires started to well up in my heart, unfulfilled desires from childhood. This bike that I so desperately wanted, saved up all my money. I finally got that bike, and then not too long after, it got stolen. This girl that I wanted to date, I built up all the courage I possibly could to call her up on the phone and ask her out. She says yes. I'm like elated. I can't believe it. This really attractive girl wants to go out with me. The next day in school, she changed her mind, says, "No, I don't want to go." All these unfulfilled desires started to come up in my heart. And then the disappointment in my own marriage. I thought it was going to be this. Why did you? It hasn't been the way I wanted it to be. I thought it would. And like a volcano, it just started wubba, and it exploded. And I let this rage come up and out of my soul, and I aimed it right at God, and I said, "God, I hate you. I hate that you give me all these desires in my body and my soul, and nothing on this planet can satisfy them. What the beep, son of a beep, you son of a beep, beep, beep." I mean, expletives are just flowing out of me. I am enraged at God. And I'm like, oh, crap. I called up the priest right away. I said, Monsignor, I got to go to confession right away. He said, come on over to the rectory. So I went over to the rectory. Bless me, Father. It's been 3 hours since my last confession. And he said, yes, I know. And I told him everything I said to God without the beeps. And I'll never forget his words. He said, good prayer. I said, excuse me, what did you just say? He said, that was a good prayer. He said, you don't need to confess that you got honest and real with God, Christopher. You need to confess that you haven't been honest and real with God. Now you're getting naked before your Maker. Now you're learning how to pray. In fact, you just prayed Psalm 22 in union with Jesus Christ. My God, why have you abandoned me? He said, stay on this track of honesty. Stay on this track of nakedness in prayer. Stay on this track of learning how to open your unfulfilled desires just as you feel them. Continue to learn how to open them to the living God. And your whole life is going to change. And it did. And that's my advice to you, Meg. Learn how to open in an unfiltered, uncensored way. Learn how to open your desires as you really feel them to the living God. Just to conclude that story, a few years later, I had been on this journey of learning how to open my desires to the Lord as I feel them. That became my daily prayer life, and it's my prayer life to this day. And that was like 18 or 20 years ago that happened. For the last 20 years, I've been learning how to, every day in my prayer, open my desires as I feel them to the living God, and it has radically changed my life. So after learning that for a few years, my wife and I are out to dinner, and she says to me, honey, something's different in our marriage of late. Something really good. Don't you feel it? And I said, yeah, I do. I feel it. She said, well, what do you think it is? And I thought about it for a moment. I said, I think I know what it is. She said, what? I said, I think I finally realized deep in my heart that you can't satisfy me. And she got this huge smile on her face and she said, that's what I've been learning about you too. You can't satisfy me either. And I often think if anyone in the restaurant had heard that conversation, they probably thought we were about to get divorced. But we never felt closer. Why? Because we were learning through painful trials. We were learning how to take our heavy hands off each other and stop demanding that the other be perfect fulfillment. Stop demanding that the other person take away that ache. And we were learning, both of us, each in our own way, how to take that ache to the living God. Meg, that's the only way. We must, whether you're married, single, celibate, whatever your particular state in life, every human being, the only way to be authentically and fully human is to learn how to open that ache to the living God in prayer, just as we feel it. In fact, this is where Christianity begins. I mean, literally, this is where Christianity begins. When a woman who longed to be a wife and a mother learned how to open that precise longing, not to an earthly husband, but to the living God, to the living God. This is the beginning of Christianity. Meg, turn to that woman and ask her to teach you how to open that ache, just as you feel it, to the living God. Prayer, the fathers of the church tell us, and this is a direct quote from Pope Benedict XVI. He says, prayer, the fathers of the church tell us, properly understood, is nothing other than becoming a longing for God. I have other videos on this channel, Meg, that may be of help to you. Videos where I talk about turning our sexual desires into prayer. I did a video once where I showed a video of Bono, the lead singer of U2, teaching us how to open our yearning in prayer to God. And he does it through song, and it's just piercing. So check the links to learn more about those videos and keep exploring what we offer on this channel. I think you'll find it very helpful. And if anybody else, Meg or anyone, has found this video helpful, leave a comment in our comment section. If you haven't found it helpful, or you have some suggestions, or you say, Christopher, what about this? Or can you address it from this side? Or share that too. I look forward to the conversation.